Hey everyone, so about 5 years ago I finally decided to buy Bloxburg and that's when I started playing, but I think you can all relate when I say beginner's mistakes. Let's get into it. So of course, first is redoing the starter house and adding onto it, adding walls to the back of the house. I'm not gonna do that now because I want to keep it intact. And then the next beginner's mistake I made is definitely sizing. I couldn't size anything. So when I was building, I decided to have like a living room in the back. So what I did was just like, okay, so this is where I will have my windows and this will be my living room. And then I was like, okay, so my kitchen is then gonna go in the corner over here. So I'm just gonna add my kitchen here. And I was so stuck with everything. I don't think I had the multiple floors game pass yet. I did buy it pretty soon after, like 3 days after I had Bloxburg or something like that. But then I was like, okay, and then we need a hallway to the living room, so I decided to have a really long hallway, and that's how I made my cubes in houses. And then I was like, okay, I do want a guest toilet, so the guest toilet is gonna be right over here, and then I need some space for the bedroom. So my bedroom was always like in a corner like this, and then I added my ensuite over here. However, I did want to have some light in there, so what I did was like extend to the front, and then I did that. And then my other building mistake I made was going into a roof and usually picking the flat roof because it was the cheapest option we had. But when I did go for a fancy roof, I did go for the mansard roof, and then I decided to fill all of the rooms in with that same old roof. And I also kept deleting my roof because I didn't notice that there was a little house icon here that you could click and go into build mode like that. So I usually either removed the roof, or what I did was I zoomed in and then I went under it, and it was so dark, so I had to place like really bright lights everywhere. So I probably, used something like the round garden lamp or something like that. So I placed them in all of the corners so that it wasn't as dark. And then I went into build mode like this, and I was like, okay, what room am I in now? This was going to be my living room. We had to go back all the way to comfort, and I wanted some fancy furniture, so I went for the oval sofa. I did want to have multiple seating arrangements in my living room. I was like, okay, this is my living room. However, it is quite big, so I will put it more in the middle like that. And that was like about my living room. I added some random windows in there as well because I did want the nice views. So it looked something like this. Then another building mistake I made is when I was painting, of course automatic floor, if I had diagonal walls or something in between that, I actually didn't do any effort to like have my floor be straight. So what you can do, for example, if you have this, what I do now, these days, is actually create a little bit of like a shape. Wait, how is the shape so messed up though? Something like this, and then connect that so that I have like the angled part. And then I continue to make my rectangles and squares so that when I place a wooden floor, it actually looks like this. But in the olden days, I didn't care about that. I just went into floors. I did automatic placement, and then I placed my wooden floor in there. And as you can see, it completely messes up your your floor, but I didn't really care about that. I just had my floors all like that. And so when I was building, I used to think that every single wall had to have like a different material or color to it. So then I went to like a blue, and I thought, hey, this blue is pretty cool. And I was like, okay, let's paint the entire room in that blue. But then I was like, okay, but this looks a little bit bland. So then what I went ahead and did was like added a different color to that. So maybe, for example, a red or something like that. I was like, okay, this needs to have a material, for example this, and I chose to have like 2 walls in that color as well, so it didn't look as bland, but it just made it look like so hectic and not cool at all. And another beginner's mistake I made is with the garages. I always made my garages just large enough for a car for some weird reason. So garage doors were always 4. So what I did is I went 4 back and then added in my garage like this. And I really usually when I made my houses, I always went for the red brick because that's like the thing you see most in Belgium, and that's where I live. So I went for the red brick. And then for my garage, I always wanted something funky, so I went for the triangles. Don't hate me for that, please, please, please. But I went for the triangles on the garage door. I thought that was so cool and so New York-like, or like graffiti-like, something like that. I don't know what I was thinking at that moment. And then I had like, I don't know, something in here, like my car in here, and it filled up the entire room. So let's go for the Blox STS. As you can see, it just goes all the way to the back of the garage. There's not really any space to go behind your car. So yeah, that was another beginner's mistake that I made. Also, when I got a little bit richer, I wanted to act fancy, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna create an indoor pool outside. So what I did is I copied my garage over here so that we have the very cool looking garage doors. And then in here I added my pool, so it looked something. Oh my god, I'm almost broke. I know I have 500k, but it goes really fast when you make videos. And then like this, and I had my pool, and so then I had to go out of build mode and actually open the garage door to jump into my pool, and I thought that was so cool and such a cool idea, and now looking at that, I'm like, why would you put a pool in a garage? I also used to think, so I did paint this in brick, but I also used to think that every, like, corner had to have a different type of color and materials. So I usually then went for a concrete and painted that, and this reminds me so much of like my first mansions that I ever built. But I used to think that every little other corner had to have like a different color and material to it, so painting that in the brick again. And this is kind of like what my builds looked like in the beginning. And then the fences came out, and with the fences I always thought that I needed to use the full space, so we had 30 by 30 plots, so I needed to use the full space. So what I did is, like, when I made my fences, I always went all the way to the back like this, and then, whoa, that was wrong, and then connected them back to the front of my house, of course leaving the garage in peace. And then what I decided to do was like create little areas, or like hide the little areas, so I did make an opening to the garden. And then the same thing here, I thought I had to be symmetrical as well. And then here as well. And then I decided to design my own areas that I would have. So this would be like a walkthrough area. And then same thing here in the back of the house. So we continued this and connected it to the house, of course. And then in there, it had to have trees. So of course, the cheapest rough tree will do. I didn't even rotate my trees, so I just placed them. So they all were angled in the same direction. And then in between here as well, I thought it was important to have as many trees as possible. And so yeah, this is what kind of like my house looked like in the beginning of playing Bloxburg. I also didn't know you could copy color, so what I usually did was like having a nice color on my roof, for example, I don't know, this gray, and then I did that, and then I went back to the other roof and I didn't care to check the other color, so this one usually had another color like that was close enough to gray but not really the same color, and that's what I had there. And then I made my custom path go all the way through the garden, and I didn't care about layering it, so I just layered it like that, and then I continued this way. And I always, for the outside, I always went, and I still like to use that though, still a nice material, but I always went for this stone, didn't even paint it, and I just put it like this. And as you can see, it overlaps. However, one beginner's mistake I never made was going into pots and creating my entire outside floor. That's something I never did, and that's why I don't really understand why other players do it, but a lot of players make outside paths with the path tool. I think the path tool is something that only beginners use. I never I don't know, there's never like a case where I see people who have been playing for a while now use this, but as you can see, a lot of people do this and then it overlaps like this and it looks so bad. I don't even know why the path tool is a thing, but I think it's gotta be in game forever now since, well, it is in game. The only time I like the pot tool is in the starter house with a little pot that goes to the front of the house. That's all. Oh, and then like way in the beginning, I had my placement grid on large. I didn't know you could make it smaller. So what I did with my kitchen, I also didn't know you could drag stuff against the wall. So my kitchen was always like not against the wall completely. So I had something like this, not even like lined up or something like that. And this is what my kitchen looked like. They always had a gap in between it. Also, I tried to make islands, like kitchen islands, but then I ended up with like a massive gap in between that, and I usually added like plants in there or something like that, but it was so hard to do and I could never ever finish that. So usually add like one counter that had like this. It came out a little bit though. So this is what I usually had in my kitchen, and then I discovered the small placement grid, but I still had like a gap in there, and I think that was because of the building limitation, because we didn't have advanced placing. I thought that was the reason for it, but I don't really remember it. And then I also had a habit of going into decorations, picking one plant. We didn't have a lot of plants. We still do not have enough plants by far. But I did like one plant. I colored the pot, not the plant itself. So I had like the color brown or something like that. And then I copied that and I placed just the same plant without rotating it. I placed the same plant throughout the house everywhere because it was faster and quicker to build it. And then here as well, like, I don't know, I just placed the same plant everywhere. I didn't know what to do with hallways, so I just filled them up with like the same plant as well. Oh my god, that was terrible. Now, anyways, those are my main building mistakes. I do want to know what your building mistakes was, or something that you look back on and regret that you like ever did that in Bloxburg. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that like button and please subscribe.